of all, we'd like to welcome you on behalf of Brentwood High School and Brentwood Middle School. We have Dr. Barkley back here and partnering with you to try to bring information to parents. Can you guys hear me okay? All right, to bring information to parents and to some of the students that we have in our audience today about the dangers of vaping. And then afterwards, Dr. Barkley and I would like to discuss with you some measures, preventative measures that we are taking at our schools to help with the vaping issues that we currently have. I'd like to introduce to you guys Dr. Michell Fiscus from the Tennessee Department of Health. Dr. Fiscus is currently the Director of Immunizations, is that correct, for the Tennessee Department of Health. We appreciate her volunteering her time and bringing this presentation to you. So if you please give her a warm Brentwood welcome to Dr. Fiscus.
So thank you. I think Brentwood High Middle might win the prize for the most people that have come to one of these talks, so I'm pretty excited about that. Dr. Barkley did have me come and speak at Brentwood Middle, which was amazing, and I, on behalf of the Department of Health, have really appreciated the interest that this community has had. So I'm a pediatrician by training. I had a practice in Cool Springs for about 17 years, and then 2 years ago went to the Department of Health as the Deputy Medical Director in their Division of Family Health and Wellness, and there I worked on tobacco across the state along with a flurry of other issues. And then first of this year, I transitioned to become the medical director of the state immunization program. So I'm a Williamson County parent. I have 2 high school students at Page. They don't vape that I know of. But even though I've transitioned out of that role for the state, this is something that I have done kind of across Williamson County. So I think I've been to just about every high school in Williamson County now with this message, and I'm glad that word's getting out. I've worked a lot with Carol Birdsong, who everyone loves, to get stuff into the In Focus newsletters, and just to try to get these talks publicized so that we can get some messages out. So I always start with this. So how many of you parents know what a JUUL is? Raise your hand. Okay, so when I started these talks about 6 months ago, I would get maybe 20% of the parents that knew what a JUUL was. So we're making some progress. How many of the parents in the audience know someone under the age of 18 that uses a JUUL? A lot of you. Okay, yeah. How many of the kids in the audience know someone under the age of 18 that uses a JUUL? I'm not asking about you. I'm just asking if you know somebody. Know somebody? Yeah. Under 16? Know somebody? Huh? Being honest? Yeah. Under 14? Know somebody? Yeah. I've done these talks where I've gotten down to 9, which is really scary. So we're going to talk a little bit about where we've been with tobacco in Tennessee, how we found ourselves where we are right now, and some talk about where we might be going if we don't kind of start to get a wrap on this. And so Julie Meyer is on our tobacco team, and she is in the back, and I didn't bring a clicker for the slides, so when you see me going like this, it's because Julie's advancing my slides, and everybody on camera is going to get to see that too, so fabulous. All right, so it's been a long time that the tobacco industry has been targeting kids. So this is from one of their marketing research studies back in 1981 with the quote, "It is important to know as much as possible about teenage smoking patterns and attitudes. Today's teenager is tomorrow's potential regular customer, and the overwhelming majority of smokers first begin to smoke while in their teens." And the reason, guys up front, I'm going to ask you, what is the reason why the tobacco companies are targeting youth as their next potential customer? For money, right? And what's happening to their current customers? Yeah, it is smart, Mark. Did somebody say they're dying? Yeah, so the tobacco companies have one focus, right? And that is to make money. And their current customer base is dying. And we as parents have been telling our kids since they can't probably even remember when they first heard the message, don't smoke, don't smoke, don't smoke, don't smoke, right? So we've done a really good job with getting kids to not use tobacco. So this is actually data in Tennessee. We do a youth risk behavior survey every other year called the YRBS. And if you look back in 1993 when they did it, we had about 75% of high school students in Tennessee that had ever tried cigarette smoking, 3 out of 4. And now in 2017, which is the last year we have data for, we were down to about 1 in 3. So we've made some good progress. And if you go to the next one, these are kids who currently smoke, which means that they have smoked a cigarette in the past 30 days, at least one time. And we're down to less than 1 in 10. We used to be more than 1 in 3. So we've made a lot of progress. And then when you look at kids who currently smoke, these are daily smokers in Tennessee. In our Tennessee high schools, we used to be at 14%, almost 15%, and now we're down to 2%. That's pretty amazing. I don't know that we will ever get better than 2% for daily smokers, but that's some pretty amazing change that we've seen. But unfortunately, go ahead, Julie. Go again. We have this next generation of electronic cigarettes that is really actually starting to reverse the really good work that we've done around tobacco in Tennessee. So generally what e-cigarettes have is they have a heating element and a battery and then an electronic circuit that heats that up. Go ahead. And that's sort of what the guts of one look like. And they all kind of have that same quality. They can look like all kinds of different things. They can have all kinds of different names, but a rose is a rose is a rose, and an e-cig is an e-cig is an e-cig. And it doesn't matter if you call it a vape or a mod or an APV or an ENS. They are all electronic cigarettes. And part of where our youth get confused is in the nomenclature, because they don't consider things like JUUL to be e-cigs. They consider JUULs to be JUULs, or JUULs are vapes, but they're not e-cigs in their vernacular. So here you can see some on the right. These are the tank devices that can be refilled by going and buying nicotine juice at any of the stores that are next to the nail salons and the check cashing places. And then the ones in the middle, these are more sort of one-use type electronic cigarettes. Go ahead. So from the very first word of this, it's a lie. It's misinformation. Because what comes out of these electronic cigarettes is not vapor to begin with. So you guys take science. You're going to be so sorry that you sat in the front, because I'm going to keep picking on you like the whole time. So do you know what the definition of a vapor is? Can you tell me? Yeah. So a vapor is when a liquid goes to a gaseous form, right? And then when you cool that down and it condenses back down, what do you get back? Water again, right? So that's it. Water, steam, water. That's what a vapor is. What's in these is an aerosol, which is different. Aerosols have things suspended in them. So if you take that cloud of that comes out of a tank device and you were to cool it down and have it come back into a liquid form, it's not water with flavor in it. It is oil, which is what makes the cloud, is aerosolized oil particles. There is, I'm sorry, go back for a second, Julie. There is flavoring in it. There's something called diacetyl that we'll talk about in a minute. There are heavy metals like lead and cadmium and nickel and tin that are in there. There's nicotine, of course. There has yet to be an electronic cigarette that they've studied that didn't have at least one cancer-causing agent in it. So it is this whole cloud of chemicals that is then being purposely inhaled into young lungs. And so kids fall into this thing where, a friend will say, oh, this tastes amazing and there's nothing wrong with it and there's no nicotine in it. It just tastes and smells really good. Here, you should try it. And they kind of buy into that thinking that, oh, okay, it's harmless. And then they get hooked. And then by the time they figure out that it's something bad, they realize that they've got a problem. Go ahead. So there's this thing called popcorn lung that developed, and it's not lungs that are filled with popcorn, although that would be interesting. So in the microwave popcorn factories, they use a compound called diacetyl, which is what they use to flavor microwave popcorn. And I don't know that it is exactly what it is, but I feel like when I microwave a bag of popcorn and that yellow ooze on the side of the bag, in my head, that's diacetyl, and it's like present form. It may not be, but it's the stuff that makes you go, I don't know if I should eat this, but microwave popcorn is yummy, and so I'll have it, and then I'll have another bag. And it's kind of the same thing with e-cigarettes. I don't know if I should smoke this, but it smells really yummy, and it makes my brain feel good, and so I think I'll do that. Well, what happened is the people who were working in the microwave popcorn factories, when they would take the diacetyl and put it into vats to flavor the popcorn, it would hit heat and it would aerosolize in the factory. And so these factory workers were breathing diacetyl 8, 12 hours a day all through their shifts. They weren't wearing respirators. They didn't know that this was going to be a health hazard. And after time, they developed a condition called bronchiolitis obliterans, which is just as scary as it sounds. So bronchioles are the little tiny airways. You have like your trachea, and then your bronchi, and then your bronchioles, little tiny tubes, and then your alveoli out in those are the air sacs where emphysema lives if you're a smoker. So there's these little airways. And what happens with diacetyl is it actually obliterates those airways, bronchiolitis obliterans. So it turns them into mush. And so if we don't have airways that can take oxygen from the atmosphere and come into our lungs and diffuse out into our tissues and bring carbon dioxide back and exhale it, then we develop chronic lung conditions. We die sooner than we should. And so that's what these people were developing, not knowing that this was an occupational hazard. And so some of the popcorn factory workers sued the popcorn factories, won millions of dollars in judgments, but that's not going to reverse the fact that now they are saddled with chronic lung disease for the rest of their lives. But the other thing that's really important to know is how nicotine affects kids' brains differently. So I have young Johnny Depp with a cigarette, and then I have old Johnny Depp, and they are not doing him any favors. And brains just perceive nicotine differently when they're young versus when they're old. So if you've ever seen an adult take a drag off a cigarette when they're stressed, what they do is go, and they just kind of like that first drag just relaxes you. That's not what kids do. Kids get a little jazzed with nicotine. They feel a little rush from it. They get a little head buzz from it. Adults don't feel quite like that. And teenagers are more sensitive to the rewards of nicotine, and they are less sensitive to the negative things that nicotine causes. So what happens is we can see kids that are taking massive doses of nicotine that an adult would not ever tolerate on a regular basis because their brains are just wired differently. They accept nicotine a different way. We also know that when kids use nicotine, it is a gateway to smoking because a lot of kids who start out vaping will eventually transition to cigarettes. We know that they're more likely to use marijuana, alcohol, cocaine, meth, heroin, other things that cause them to have that same kind of response in their brain. We don't see those kinds of behaviors with adults who use nicotine. So back to the tobacco manufacturers. So back in 1972, it's a well-known fact that teenagers like sweet products, honey might be considered. So for decades, they've been trying to figure out what can we do to get kids on these products. So just kind of to take you back to what has happened with tobacco over the years. So back in 1971, Congress said, okay, you can't advertise tobacco anymore on the air. And so a lot of parents that are my age, I'm 50, I cannot remember a time when there were tobacco ads on television. And I'm pretty old, so it was a long time ago. It took them 15 years before they stopped advertising smokeless tobacco. It was a really long gap. And then in 1998, there was something called the Master Settlement Agreement. And what that did was it was an agreement between tobacco companies and a lot of states, about 20, 25 states. And the tobacco companies said, we'll give you a whole bunch of money every year if you don't really sue us for killing people. And maybe you lay off some of the tobacco laws a little bit. So Tennessee is one of the states that entered into the Master Settlement Agreement. And since that time, the state of Tennessee has received $3 billion, with a B, dollars from our tobacco manufacturers in the state. In the last 5 years, about $20 million of that money has been spent on prevention. But that's it. The rest of it goes into the general budget. It helps balance the state's budget. But there has been this ongoing relationship for 25, almost 20 years, right? Between the tobacco companies and many of the states. In 2006, the courts got rid of low tar, because that's not really a thing, and light cigarettes. And then in 2009, they banned cigarettes that had flavors. There used to be clove cigarettes, and I can't even think of what the other flavors were, but they didn't ban menthol. And that's really interesting, because menthol is the preferred flavor of cigarettes among the African American population in America. So they took out all the flavors except that one. If you have time and you're interested in kind of the history of that, there's a really great documentary on YouTube called Black Lungs, Black Lives. It's only about 15 minutes long, and it goes through the history of why it is that we still have menthol in the United States when that targets Black Americans, and how tobacco money has even gotten into the Congressional Black Caucus at the Capitol. It's really interesting history. Go ahead. And one more. So we have all of these flavors of electronic cigarette e-juice, nicotine juice, and none of them are banned because there aren't any regulations about electronic cigarette products except that you have to be at least 18 to purchase them. There's no rules about how you sell them. You can sell them on the internet. You can sell them in stores. And there's nothing about flavors. And I remember growing up that we had a Good Humor truck that would come down our road, and he sold those Boom Boom Pops. But now they're an e-cigarette flavor. And the chicken and waffles one I find tremendously disturbing. I'm not a native Southerner. I don't really understand the whole chicken and waffles or hot chicken thing. I certainly would not want to inhale chicken and waffle flavored, I don't know, meat. Inhaling meat flavored things is just, I think it's a step too far. Go ahead. So let's, in 3 years, the amount of money that's spent on electronic cigarette advertising across the country went up by 1,200%. And remember that we don't have any money in the state to actually combat this. We stopped receiving state government money appropriations to fight tobacco in Tennessee at the end of fiscal year 2018. So we no longer have any state money to work on tobacco. These companies, though, spend $1 million a day in Tennessee, just in Tennessee, advertising these products, mostly to youth, to try to get them to buy. We can have ads on radio, on TV. Now that Philip Morris has purchased a large stake in JUUL, I've started hearing JUUL ads on the radio. I've seen JUUL ads in the Tennessean. They've got a much larger budget and a much greater ability to be able to advertise their products now. And then there's the whole kind of cultural thing that electronic cigarettes are, somehow disrupting or a little bit rebellious, which is very much repeating what we used to see with all the other kinds of tobacco, right? You've got sex appeal, you've got celebrity endorsements, and so you've got the old Marlboro man over here. So there were 3 Marlboro men, they all died from lung cancer. Now you've got kind of the new rugged guy who's using blue. Go ahead. You've got you know, even the dress and the chair is similar to what we used to see with Lucky Strikes decades ago. This one's super disturbing. Yeah, and then you know, why quit when you can just switch to an electronic cigarette instead? And then the last one is my favorite. Oh, not the last one. Okay, this is the freedom one. Oh, go ahead. Freedom, take back your freedom with electronic cigarettes. And then the last one is my favorite because this gal is not only giving herself cancer, but also sinus cancer to her dog. But this one is, you know, just the picture of health, right? It's green, it's electric, there's got to be something good about that. Go ahead. Up until very recently, kids were successful in buying electronic cigarettes online 94% of the time. And so all the parents are like, whoa, how'd they do that? Well, it's your birthday or it's Christmas and Aunt Betty or Grandma gives you a Visa gift card and you go onto the JUUL.com website and you lie about your age on the little spinny thing where you put in your date of birth and you purchase yourself a JUUL starter kit for $49 and have it shipped to wherever safe place you think you can have it shipped. That's how that happens. Some of these things have been locked down to an extent. JUUL has put some measures on their website now. You have to put in part of your social security number and it's supposed to go through some kind of database. I don't know if it really does or if they're just you know, putting that up for show. But they were, or you grab your mom's social security number, you know. So there are ways to get them. And because there's no regulations about selling them online, it's been very easy for kids to acquire these products. So this is where we are now. And this was 2016 data. So in 2016, we had 2 million kids, middle and high schoolers, that were using electronic cigarettes. 4% of middle schoolers, 11% of high schoolers. But there was new data that just came out Monday. And now we're up to 4.9% of middle schoolers. We're up to almost 21% of high schoolers and 4.9 million kids. We only have 6 million people in the state of Tennessee. So it's nearly an entire state of Tennessee's worth of kids that are using these products. And we're in trouble. We're in trouble. They're in bigger trouble. By comparison, in 2016, 3.2% of adults were using electronic products, and almost 60% of them were still smoking when they were doing it. So when you hear the industry boast that these are great cessation devices, by and large, adults who use these products they may be quitting tobacco, but 60% of the time they're just using tobacco and upping their nicotine addiction because now they're vaping in their cars and in their houses, and then they're going outside to smoke. Go ahead. So we have essentially erased the progress that we've made in tobacco in youth between 2017 and 2018 because of electronic products. And you can see that, you know, we now have 27% of high school kids that are using tobacco products. We had gotten that down, way down. And it's not because the cigarettes and cigars and smokeless and hookahs and pipe tobacco rates have gone up. It's because the e-cigarettes have come in and filled the gap. So this is kind of where it began. We've had electronic cigarettes around for about a decade or so, but it's the JUUL that caught the eye of the kids. And it's a slick device. It's easy to hide. It looks like a USB device. I've had lots of parents tell me how they've been fooled by these devices. I had a friend who found one in the laundry and gave it back to her kid because she thought it was what he was storing his papers on. I had a parent at Nolensville High School tell me that her friend found it. She drove it to school. She gave it to the front office, who gave it to the teacher, who gave it to the kid because they didn't want him to be without his trombone oil for band. It's really slick and easy to hide. You can put it in your sleeve. You can put it in your pocket. Girls tuck it in their bra. School officials can't search you like that. They would get in a lot of trouble if they're trying to do that. So it's really slick. So it's got this little tiny dongle thing that you stick into your computer that cradles the JUUL so that it charges. That little dongle thing looks just like the thing that powers the clicker for you to change slides on a PowerPoint. And then you've got the JUUL, and then you have these pods, which are the thing with the colored cap. You can see there's 4 different flavors of these. And after you've charged the device, you pop the little pod in there, and that's what gives you the nicotine. Go ahead. Go ahead, one more. Click on through. So there's a rechargeable battery, and then you've got the JUUL pod cartridge, the pod that has the nicotine juice. It has a little cover that comes off. You plug that doodad into the big long thing. Go ahead. Keep going. And it's got a little light. The kids know they can put a little piece of electrical tape on that so it doesn't show up. So you can hide that pretty easily. And unlike the tank devices that you see, so if you're driving down Mallory Lane and you've got someone in front of you in a car who's got a tank device and the window's down, you see, I mean, you know that person's vaping. JUULs don't hardly put out anything. So kids are doing it in class. They make shirts, have a little pocket right here so you can stick your JUUL. You reach down, you take a puff off of it, you exhale into your shirt or exhale into your sleeve. And then when the teacher walks by and she says, hey, what's that strawberry berry flavor smell that I'm smelling? Are you JUULing? Oh no, Mrs. Smith, I was using my hand sanitizer. So they can get away with it in class. My kids, your kids, I'm sure will tell you that if you walk into the bathroom in a high school or a middle school, on any given day, it will be a complete medley of different flavors of electronic cigarette nicotine juice that's in there. So much so that some schools have closed down bathrooms to try to keep the kids in one part of the school. Some kids just hold it all day because they don't want to have to walk through that. It is everywhere. So a 4-pack of JUULs is cheaper than 4 packs of cigarettes in the state of Tennessee. And 1 JUUL pod has an equivalent amount of nicotine of an entire pack of cigarettes. We have kids that have a 2 or 3 pod a day habit, because a pod only costs you about $5-6 if you're buying it off the 18-year-old in your senior class. They're pretty easy to get, especially in a wealthy community. You can trade and barter to get these, and they taste good. And so it's pretty easy to just hit on that all day long and get yourself into a really significant habit. Go one more time. So what's in here? We have nicotine. The kids will tell you, oh no, there are JUUL pods that don't have nicotine. That is absolutely not true. Every JUUL pod has nicotine. JUUL does not make a product that does not have nicotine. There is benzoic acid, which is super cool because benzoic acid cools your throat down and makes it so that that really high level of nicotine doesn't irritate you, so your throat doesn't get scratchy and irritated, so you can tolerate higher levels of nicotine. There's glycerol, and there's also propylene glycol, which is an antifreeze. And those are what aerosolize to make the cloud that you see. Those are in soap. And so the idea that you would inhale on purpose particles that belong in soap into your lungs is probably not the best health advice that we could give. There are natural oils, which I assume someone thinks is a good idea. And then there are flavors and extracts. And, you know, again, the take-home message of this is that there's 59 milligrams per milliliter. Go ahead, Julie, or that's stuck. Yeah. So 1 JUUL pod is equivalent to 20 cigarettes, which is a pack. Yeah. Is it stuck, Julie? No, okay. So there have been 3.2 million JUUL pods sold every single month in the United States. And over the last year, they had a 641% increase in their sales in 1 year. I talked to some folks talk to is a nice word. I fight with some folks on Twitter about this, and they own vape shops. And they will tell me that only 8% of their sales are in JUUL, because it's not the 18 and 20-year-olds that are getting carded in the brick and mortar stores that are buying JUUL. It's the kids that are driving the sales of this. So we have people who are of age who are going in and purchasing JUUL, or they're purchasing them online. But it is, by and large, not the adult population that is using this product. Good. So the other really great thing about JUUL, I mean, these guys they're pretty brilliant at getting people hooked, is that it uses something called salt-based nicotine, which is not the kind of nicotine that is in the nicotine juice that you go buy in a store and put in a refillable device. That's free-based nicotine. So salt-based nicotine is much more readily available to the brain. It gives you a much faster, much harder hit of nicotine than what the free-based nicotine does that's in the refillable units. And that is what has also contributed to the addiction of these kids, because now you've got this massive amount of nicotine, 59 milligrams per milliliter of nicotine, in a form that is immediately available to your brain. And that feels good. And kids do stuff that feels good before they think about what the consequences of that are. So in comparison, in the tank devices, you can actually get e-juice that does not contain nicotine if you go to a vape store. There are some that have no nicotine. JUUL is not one of those products. But at most, they have about 36 milligrams of nicotine per milliliter. So you're looking at almost twice as much in a JUUL device as what you can get in a vape shop. This is a graph that Pax Labs, who's the maker of JUUL, put out as an advertising promotional thing. So across the bottom is time. And if you go up, that is the concentration of nicotine in your blood. So that's seconds across the bottom. And the yellow line is what a cigarette does. So really quick spike, 6 seconds to get nicotine into your brain from the first drag of a cigarette. And then it comes down, kind of slowly over 10 seconds or so till you take your next drag. The blue line at the very bottom is what the free-based nicotine products, like in the refillable tank devices, that's what the curve looks for those. So you get kind of this low level of nicotine to the brain. Happens kind of quickly, goes away kind of slowly. The pink line is what JUUL does. It just absolutely mimics what a cigarette does. It's really pretty genius. Go ahead. So one more time, there's 59 milligrams per milliliter in a pack, which is equivalent to a pack of cigarettes. So there's 200 puffs in a pod. So 10 puffs off a pod is equivalent in nicotine to 1 cigarette. And 1 pod, 200 puffs, is equivalent to an entire pack. Go ahead. Taking a minute. And it's that benzoic acid that's in there that makes it so that the kids can tolerate that degree of concentration of nicotine. Go ahead. So when you have 641% increase in your sales over a year, you're going to get a whole lot of knockoffs. People who are my age remember when Birkenstocks came out and like how many ugly shoes followed on the heels of Birkenstocks. So we have Vappuccino, which that one's nice. Aspire, Smoke. They're not super creative. My favorite Voopoo Panda, which is the one in the middle that I guess is supposed to look like a panda. This one, Surion Drop Ultra Portable Pod System, looks, I think, like a highlighter I used to use. The one down here in the corner, the Pax one, those are marijuana cartridges, so that if you're in a legal marijuana state, you can get marijuana pods for your vape too. So I get asked a lot, well, what happens if I get caught using these products, or what happens if I've decided that I'm going to sell these products because I'm 18 or can get a source of them? So in the state of Tennessee, if you are under the age of 18, which is the legal age of purchase, and you are caught with any tobacco product, whether you're using it or not, if it's in your possession, then you will likely go to tobacco court, you will likely get a fine, and up to 50 hours of community service. If, however, you are someone who is selling or attempting to sell a tobacco product to a minor under the age of 18, that is now a Class C misdemeanor, which carries with it up to 30 days in jail and a fine, or a fine. And so it is not a little thing to be selling pods to your friends. Go ahead. Tennessee is one of 14 remaining states that has something called preemption, which I didn't know what preemption was until I went to the Department of Health. Preemption came out of part of the Master Settlement Agreement back in 1998. And what preemption means is that we are not allowed to pass any tobacco control ordinances in the state of Tennessee without going through the state legislature. So if Brentwood, Tennessee said, oh, we have all these restaurants that have outdoor patios and we don't want smoking on our outdoor patios in Brentwood, so we're going to pass a city ordinance that we're not going to have any smoking on our patios anymore. You can't do it. You can ask for voluntary policies from those restaurants, but you can't enforce anything like that. It has to go through the legislature. So there's only a handful of places in the state of Tennessee where outdoor smoking is not allowed. The Ascend Amphitheater, that was part of the agreement when it was built, that would be smoke-free. The Kingsport Aquatic Center in Kingsport, Tennessee, way up near Bristol. The Dogwood Amphitheater in Cookeville. And now, as of last session, any of the state-funded universities can choose to have tobacco-free campuses now if their Board of Regents elects to do that. So UT Chattanooga went tobacco-free January 1st. UT Knoxville went tobacco-free last year. Most of the technical schools and colleges around the state have tobacco-free campuses for the most part. But it's actually enforceable now with the state-funded schools, which is great. And that's it. That's it. So you can see on the map, these are the states that still have some sort of preemption. There's only a handful of states that have as much preemption as we have. And it really creates a barrier for trying to restrict youth use of tobacco. Go ahead. So the legal age of purchase in Tennessee is 18 years. And so I contacted the Department of Ed and I said, how many kids will be 18 or up when they graduate high school? And it's 230,000 in the state of Tennessee. So there are 230,000 legal purchasers of tobacco in our high schools that can go and purchase those products and sell them to their younger classmen. And again, despite nearly, I'm sorry, that slide is wrong, with $3 billion in master settlement funding given to Tennessee, we currently don't have any state funding to fight tobacco use or misuse or what's happening to our kids. A lot of folks wonder about secondhand exposure from these products. So there's secondhand smoke, there's thirdhand smoke, which is the residue that deposits on furniture and on carpets. And we know that when young children crawl around on those surfaces and then we check their urine, we can tell that they have those chemicals in their body. The same thing happens with these electronic products. When the smoke-free indoor laws started to pass, there was a group that did a study. They went into a bar that stopped allowing smoking but allowed vaping in their over 21 establishment. And they just let people vape like they usually do. And they went in the morning and they wiped down those surfaces to see what they could collect off them. And it was lead and cadmium and at least 2 different carcinogens, things that cause cancer, and nicotine, of course. And so if you're a small child and you're around someone who's vaping, then you have a large body surface area, you're putting your hands in your mouth, and you can certainly end up getting poisoned as a result of those exposures. And And then we have, as a result of these, started to see a huge rise in nicotine poisonings in young children because of all the flavors. I mean, if something's going to look like Sour Patch Kids and it's in mom's purse, it's pretty easy for a kid to go in and open that up. We have learned the hard way that about 1 teaspoon of e-juice will kill a toddler. So by the time that kid gets the top off, takes a swig of it, and mom figures out what that was, in some cases, that's too late. So just, go ahead. Just between January of 2017 and September, so in 9 months, there were almost 1,800 poisonings reported to the Poison Control Center, which is actually here at Vanderbilt, because kids were getting into these products. They do require that they're child-proof. They have child-proof caps now. I don't know about you, but I have a bottle of Tylenol in the bottom of my bag that unscrews itself on a daily basis to find Tylenol scattered all over the bottom of my bag. I have no doubt that a 2-year-old who can reset my iPhone knows how to get into one of these products if they want to. So they're illegal in schools, but again, kids can go online and learn how to be a vaping ninja on YouTube, how to hide it in school, and also how to hack the devices and fill them with marijuana oil. Put in, they're generally not refillable, the single-use ones, but they figured out how to hack those. And again, they can be pretty stealthy in class about using them. There's also e-Hookah, which I'm going to talk about for just a minute. So, how many of you are familiar with hookah to begin with? Not so. I'm so proud of you. You know more about JUULS than hookah. Good for you, Brentwood. Hookah is a type of tobacco. It's a lot more popular in Middle Eastern countries, Asia, Africa, but it's more of a social thing. So you have a big pipe that has water in it, and the water bubbles up through the tobacco and makes smoke, and then you have several people with mouthpieces around it, and you just, you sit and socialize and you smoke hookah, and it's usually flavored in some way. And so we have hookah bars that have popped up around Tennessee. Well, now there are e-Hookah and personal hookah devices, if you prefer hookah to your regular garden variety electronic device. The really scary thing about hookah is that an hour session of hookah is equivalent to smoking 100 cigarettes. And since this is a social thing, it's pretty easy to sit around a hookah pipe for an hour. So we have young adults who have found hookah to be pleasurable and something fun to do as a social activity, and they are taking in massive quantities of nicotine and these other chemicals. And then they also spread the love. So if you have an electronic device and you're a high school kid or a middle school kid, you're pretty likely to share it with your friends because not everybody will have one and you want to introduce it to them. But about 80% of the population has herpes simplex 1, which is the virus that causes what are called fever blisters sometimes. They're very contagious, and so it's very easy to see people who are passing these devices spreading those. We also, on a fairly regular basis, see other types of infections in kids' mouths, like gonorrhea and herpes 1, which is genital herpes, that can also be passed, not to mention mono and strep and all the other types of things that you might see. Go ahead. So we know that if a kid uses a vape even one time, their chance of becoming a smoker of conventional cigarettes is 3 to 4 times higher than if they had never touched a vape to begin with. And that's not even kids that are using them routinely. That's just using them once. Go ahead. There was a study that came out literally like a month ago out of England, or out of the UK, and they looked at about 900 people, and the study was published, and they said, aha, vaping helps people stop smoking. So they randomized these two groups. They had about 500 people in each group, and they gave one group patches and nicotine gum and inhalers or Chantix or whatever they wanted. The people actually got to choose which product. and they got 3 months supply and some counseling. Then they had the electronic cigarette group, and they gave them a starter kit for electronic cigarettes and said, you can refill that as many times as you want to, and gave them some counseling. And so at the end of a year, the electronic cigarette group had about twice as many people quit smoking as the medication group. 18%, not a lot, versus almost 10%. But 80% of the electronic cigarette group was still using electronic cigarettes at the end of a year. So these folks, the 9% that had quit smoking with the FDA-approved medications, were not using nicotine. These guys just switched from one habit to the other. So there are still no good studies to show that electronic cigarettes are a useful or effective tool to stop smoking. And we know that more than 60% or about 60% of people who are smokers who are using electronic cigarettes will continue to use both products. In 2013, I think, the Tennessee Department of Health put out its first advisory about electronic cigarettes. We updated that in 2017 and then again at the end of 2018. And basically are focusing on the fact that we need to keep these products away from kids. If adults are smokers and they decide that they're going to try an electronic product, that's their decision. But we have kids who never would have touched a cigarette, ever, who are using these products now. So this is where we are. In 2015, we had 40% of high school students in Tennessee who reported ever having used an electronic cigarette. In 2017, that number was about the same. We don't expect that number to go down anytime soon because you can't unever use something. So we got to wait for that class, those 4 years to go by before we're really going to see that number go down. And then we saw this in 2017, the percentage of high school students who currently use, which means once in the last 30 days, an electronic nicotine product. And we went, that's encouraging. Maybe this is just some passing fad and it's all just going to go away because the rate dropped by almost half between 2015 and 2017. And then we thought for a second and went, oh, wait. Look at how they phrased the question. So the question is, percentage of high school students who currently use electronic vapor product, including e-cigarettes, e-cigars, e-pipes, vape pipes, vaping pens, e-hookahs, and hookah pens, such as Blue, Enjoy, Views, Mark 10, Logic, Vaping Plus, Ego, and Halo, at least one day in the last 30. Now, if I was a JUUL user, I would say, well, that doesn't say JUUL. Must not be me. And I would not check that box. That's what we suspect, because all the other data is showing that we're continuing to see this really rapid rise in youth use of electronic cigarettes. We have since put out another kind of special survey to middle schoolers and high schoolers that asks this question, but then asks a second question as to whether or not they have ever used JUUL. I don't have that data back yet, but it'll be really interesting to see if we've just swapped curves. Go ahead. JUUL's not going to be the last of it. So anybody ever heard of IQOS? Oh, do you travel internationally? Okay. So IQOS is not available in the United States. FDA has blocked this because they have found that it is not a product that is beneficial to Americans at this point. And it is a little bit terrifying. So this is a heat not burn product. So you get a tobacco stick and you put it into this little device and it heats it up so that you get smoke off of it, but it doesn't light it on fire. That's the difference. And so Philip Morris, who owns this, says, well, that's healthier because you're not actually inhaling smoke or, it's not combusted, so it must be healthier. FDA said, no, we're not buying it. We don't think that's the case. Early studies have shown that it might be a little less harmful than a cigarette, but it is way more harmful than the electric stuff. So I'm hoping that this won't get anywhere. But, it looks like a cool little retro flip phone. I mean, who wouldn't want that? And then there's a hummingbird, and who doesn't like hummingbirds? The really terrifying thing about this is there's a microchip in this product. And that microchip, Philip Morris says, is there so that if your device is malfunctioning, it has a Bluetooth capability. And so you can hook it up to internet, and Philip Morris can get into your device and make sure it works properly. Or they could capture data on all of their users so that they know exactly when you take a hit, how long you take a hit, what hours you take a hit, how long a stick lasts you. All of that information is now potentially available so that they can dial that product in so that they can get maximum addiction out of it. yeah. All right. She's saying later they'll send you a little reminder that, hey, you haven't used your IQOS today. You better get on that. We also have Nicopix, which are popping up in the schools. So these are nicotine laced toothpicks. They look like toothpicks. My kids go to Page where they have toothpicks, and so you can buy these. I actually looked for this on Amazon, and it came up on Amazon. Sent me to the site that sells these. $24 for 20 of them. I heard they're selling them for about 50 cents to $1 a piece, which means they're not making their margin. But those kids aren't taking economics, I guess. But this is just the next thing. So there is constantly a push from the tobacco companies to find a way to get an addictive substance into our kids. So I want to talk about some happy things for a couple of minutes. So a few years ago, we started a youth-led anti-tobacco movement called TNSTRONG. And that stands for Tennessee Stop Tobacco and Revolutionize Our New Generation. And the kids picked that name, and it's awesome. We've had a couple of different statewide summits now. And our next one is going to be in Murfreesboro from June 2nd to 4th. If you have a rising 8th grader through rising college freshman who might be interested in working on anti-tobacco advocacy and tobacco control, we will pay their way to come to Murfreesboro for 3 days. We'll teach them how to talk to legislators. We'll teach them how to write policy. We'll teach them how to talk to their peers about the problems with tobacco. And we'll have a really awesome time doing it. Last year we were in Chattanooga. We took them through the aquarium and worked with the aquarium to teach kids about the environmental effects of tobacco butts being flicked everywhere and what that does to our wildlife in Tennessee. We had a magician come in and teach them how they can incorporate magic when they're trying to talk to someone about tobacco so that they can get a little credibility by showing them a card trick and open a conversation that way. It's a really cool event. So if you want to follow TNSTRONG on social media or have your kid do it, when we release the registration for that, you'll know when that happens. We have tobacco-free baseball for anybody who has kids that play baseball or softball. If their team, this is for middle school or high school, if their team signs a tobacco-free pledge, including the coaches, and sends it to us, then we will send them a banner that they can put on the field that says that they struck out tobacco. And then we post a picture of their team and that banner on social media, and we send them a 5-gallon bucket full of practice balls, which I hear is a really hot commodity because they're expensive to get. We've had, I don't know how many high schools now, but they've really gone nuts for this. And so I'm hoping that we might do football in the fall, maybe have some TNSTRONG receiving gloves, or maybe have some basketball shooting sleeves that say TNSTRONG, or some swim caps that say TNSTRONG. But we would like to use our athletes as ambassadors for a tobacco-free lifestyle and let them be role models in this. So if you know a kid, if your kid plays baseball, you can email us at tnstrong.health@tn.gov, and we can get that application to you. Probably the most exciting thing that I am going to mention today, and you guys are the first ones to see this, is that we developed an anti-tobacco media campaign that will be launched this summer, and will have a consistent look across the entire state. The face of the kid will change depending on where you live, so that kid looks like the kids that we're talking to. And it is a youth empowerment type message that they've got better things to do than get hooked on these products and be preyed on by big tobacco. So the catch there is we'll have a website called weownbigtobacco.com. It's all about youth empowerment and taking back their lives from tobacco. These guys at the bottom are 6 of our TNSTRONG ambassadors. We have 12 of them across the state. These are high school kids who went to our conference, who decided that they really wanted to work on preventing tobacco use across the state. And we were able to incorporate them into our media campaign. And so they're going to be on buses, and we've got kids on billboards, and they'll be at the gasoline pumps when you're filling up your gas and that creepy TV comes on. They're going to be on there, and they'll be digitally streamed on Netflix and Hulu and on social media and radio, and we're just going to try to saturate with this message. So not only for the Department of Health to use, but we've created an anti-tobacco media library. So if there are partners that want to come grab this and say, you know, hey, we raised $500, we want a billboard outside our school, they can come in and do that, throw their logo on this, and we can provide it to them for free so that it can be used across the state to help us get that message. One thing to realize is that if your kid has fallen into this, they may be struggling with true addiction. And so I really want parents to understand that saying, give that to me and don't ever do this again, is probably not going to be the thing that gets them off these products. There are not a lot of resources for kids, unfortunately. Our Tennessee Tobacco Quit line doesn't do e-cigarettes. They work with youth 13 and up, but you've got to be chewing tobacco or smoking tobacco. There's just not a lot. And so I was really excited when last month the Truth Initiative, which is responsible for a lot of those really edgy anti-tobacco campaigns, came out with a text to quit for youth. So they can text quit to that number, 202-804-9884, and you can sign up as a parent of a kid who's addicted. You can sign up as a youth who is addicted, and I think you can sign up, maybe there's one other category that's on there. And you will get, as a parent, I signed up as a parent just to see what it did, you will get a daily message that says, you know, hey, this is how you support your kid. This is what you can say to them today to encourage them to stay away from these products. If you're a kid, you can type in things like crave, and it will send you back a message that says, okay, instead of reaching for your vape right now, you're going to go for a walk, or you're going to go eat an orange, or you're going to go call your friend, or whatever. It's so far the only tool that I've seen that is geared at youth. If you have a kid who's using these products, have that conversation with them. Can you stop? If you can't stop, then let's get you help. Call your pediatrician, call a counselor, get some friends around to help them, whatever it takes, but understand that throwing it away and expecting that they're never going to touch it again is probably not realistic. That is my email address, michelle.fiscus@tn.gov. You can follow me on Twitter @DrFiscus.
If you guys have suggestions or something that you want to bring to the table, certainly we would listen to it. But we do need some help. We're doing all that we can possibly can in a day, plus educate your child. And so this is step one with having a community forum and bringing Dr. Fiscus in just to try to educate us, and let's have a discussion about it. This is not the end all or be all. Obviously, we do have a problem at Brentwood High School and every other school in our county and every other school in our nation. We do appreciate you guys coming. Are there any more questions or anything? I want to thank the teachers who took their evening also to spend time with us, and thank you all so much for that. If you don't have any questions, I guess we'll call the meeting, and hopefully we'll get back together soon. Thank you.